All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to tear up the old playbook for how we fund public education. Seriously, forget the bake sales and car washes. We're talking about a completely new blueprint here. One that's designed for people like you, founders, operators, people who demand a provable return on investment. Not just for your money, but for our kids' futures. So let's just start with this quote, because it really frames everything. This is not just a foundation. It is a systems engineering intervention disguised as a nonprofit. Think about that. This isn't about charity. It's about treating a failing public system like a Series A startup that's burning cash and desperately needs a hard pivot. We're talking about re-architecting the whole thing from the ground up with the same kind of rigor you'd apply in, say, high-stakes engineering or finance. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at why the old model is a total failure. Then we'll introduce the solution, this thing called the Quality Improvement Hub. After that, we'll talk about the new OS for schools. Then the part you're probably waiting for, funding with provable ROI. And finally, the roadmap to make it all happen. Let's jump in. All right, first up, the old model's failure. You know, it's that classic founder mindset, right? You can't build a real solution until you've done a ruthless deep dive on the actual problem. So let's talk about why just throwing more money at schools is a fundamentally flawed strategy. So here is the absolute fatal flaw. The whole financial system is broken at its core. The main source of revenue for the school district, property taxes. And they're pegged to property values from, get this, 1983. Can you imagine trying to run your company on a pricing model from 40 years ago? It's insane. It creates what's called a structural deficit, where your costs, your burn rate, will always outpace your revenue. And you know what? No amount of fundraising, no Series B, C, or D can fix a fundamentally broken business model. And this slide really just nails the pivot we're talking about. On one hand, you've got the traditional foundation. It's basically a passive check writer, funding extras, putting a temporary Band-Aid on a massive wound. But the Quality Improvement Hub, that's a totally different beast. It's an active R&D partner. It's not there to buy more Band-Aids. It's there to re-engineer the system so it stops bleeding in the first place. There's actually a fantastic term for this kind of failure: isomorphic mimicry. It sounds complicated, but it's something every founder has seen. It's when an organization adopts the look of a solution without having the actual function. It's a classic startup trap, right? Chasing vanity metrics, looking busy instead of being productive. It's like having a beautiful pitch deck and a killer mission statement, but no actual product that works. It's absolutely fatal. Okay, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. This is the Quality Improvement Hub. The best way to think about it is as an external R&D engine for the school district. But, and this is key, it's built on principles from industries where failure is just not an option. And look, the inspiration here is crucial. This isn't some pie-in-the-sky academic theory. It's modeled after the Johns Hopkins Armstrong Institute, which totally revolutionized patient safety in healthcare. It takes these principles from what are called high-reliability organizations. We're talking aviation, nuclear power, places where things cannot go wrong, and it applies them to education. The goal is exactly the same: design systems where failure is nearly impossible. Because let's be honest, in education, a failure isn't just a bug in the code. It's a kid who gets left behind. And this right here, this is the core cultural shift. For decades, education has used data as a stick to beat people with. This model completely flips that. The whole idea is to use data as a flashlight, to light up systemic problems so you can fix them without pointing fingers and blaming people. It's all about creating the psychological safety you need for real innovation. The exact same kind you fight to build in a high-performing engineering team. Okay, section 3. So if the hub is the R&D engine, how do you actually deploy its findings? Well, you install a new operating system for the schools. And the core code, the kernel, if you will, of this new OS is something called a just culture. So what does that mean? Well, it's basically a decision-making algorithm for dealing with mistakes. In a just culture, you don't just punish every failure. You diagnose the root cause. So was it simple human error? Then you console the person and figure out how to learn from it. Was it at-risk behavior? Maybe someone cut a corner because the system itself is broken. Well, then you coach the person. And more importantly, you fix the system. The only time punishment comes in is for truly reckless behavior. This creates a culture where people feel safe to flag problems instead of hiding them, which, as you know, is the only way you ever actually improve anything. But how do you scale a culture? How do you scale this new OS across an entire district? You do it with what's called a fractal governance model. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You know how a fractal pattern repeats itself at every scale, big or small? This model ensures that the improvement team in one classroom is using the exact same playbook, the same metrics, same language, same agenda as the executive leadership team. It creates total alignment from the ground floor to the C-suite, and it means winning strategies can scale almost instantly across the whole system. Okay, which brings us to the part I know you've been waiting for. Section 4, funding with provable ROI. How do you actually fuel this whole R&D engine and, crucially, guarantee to your investors and donors that their capital is getting real, measurable returns? Well, the answer lies in a modern financial toolkit built around tokenization. Now, the core instrument we're talking about here is the Social Impact Bond, or SIB for short. And it is, in its purest form, a pay-for-performance contract. It's simple. Investors put up the initial capital to fund the project. But here's the kicker. The success payment, the payout, is only released when a pre-agreed-upon, independently verified outcome is achieved. I mean, it doesn't get simpler than that. No results, no payout. It's accountability baked right into the code of the funding itself. Okay, let's make this real with an example. Let's call it the Literacy Lift Sim. So, step 1, you identify the problem. Let's say it's stagnant third-grade reading scores. Step 2, you raise the investment, say $250,000, via tokens, to fund a high-dosage tutoring program. Now, step 3, and this is the magic. That capital gets locked into a blockchain smart contract. Think of it like a digital escrow that can't be tampered with. It is programmed with one rule. Unlock the funds only if reading proficiency goes above 60% by June 2026. Step 4, an independent university partner verifies the data. And finally, step 5, the payoff. The contract executes automatically. Donors see the verified results. It's a completely transparent, trustless, unbreakable link between funding and outcomes. And look, the SIB is just one tool in the toolbox here. This is a whole multi-strategy approach. For big capital projects like a new STEM lab, you can issue security tokens, basically digital bonds. You can integrate with crypto donor-advised funds to tap into modern, tax-efficient philanthropy. You can even issue utility tokens to let the community vote on smaller grants, gamifying the whole process. It really is a full-stack, incredibly flexible financial engine. All right, last section, the roadmap to transformation. Because, as we all know, a great vision without a practical plan for execution is, well, it's just a hallucination. So this whole model is deployed using a classic, battle-tested crawl, walk, run strategy to de-risk the launch and build momentum. So here's what it looks like. First, the crawl phase, months 1 to 6. This is all about building the foundation. Get the legal stuff done, recruit the board, and score some quick, visible wins with small educator grants to build trust. Then you move to walk, months 7 to 18. Here, you prove the concept. You launch the very first pilot SIB, maybe just a small 50K one, and you lock in that university partnership for verification. You validate the model. And once that's done, you run. In years 2 to 5, you hit the gas, scaling SIBs to tackle huge district-wide problems and rolling out the full fractal governance system. It's disciplined, it's repeatable, and it's built to scale. So when you put it all together, what's the ultimate payoff? It's a true win-win-win. For the school district, they get a safe sandbox to innovate without putting taxpayer money at risk. For donors and investors like you get the radical transparency and the verified ROI that you should be demanding. And, most importantly, for the students, they finally get a system that's actually designed to learn, to adapt, and to protect their psychological and physical safety above all else. And that really brings us to the final question, the big one. This was never just about fixing one school district. This is a blueprint, a playbook. So if we can engineer this level of transparency and this level of provable ROI for education, what's stopping us from applying this exact same operator's mindset to other broken systems, to healthcare, public safety, infrastructure? The real question is, what other public system is next in line for a new OS?